This is the Mad Church Disease Podcast with your host, MarcellusMcMillian. They don't rest, so neither do we. Sit back and listen or call the show. And now, here's your host, MarcellusMcMillian.
Hello, everybody. Hello, how are you guys on today? It is Monday. I believe it is, what is this? January, February, March, April 5th. I'm sorry. I always lose track of time. I'm kidding you not. I'm like, I do so much work. I'm always moving and losing track of time. But hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mad Church Disease Podcast. Welcome to all of these awesome moderators and commenters who are in the chat on today. Clarissa Pearson, thank you so very much for joining me on today. Sean Jackson, Teresa, LaTracy, thank you. Dewan, what up? What up, Dewan? Jim Man, Lynn Pearson. Oh, Lord, Madam Whip-Ass, you done made it to an episode. I know how much you work and you're always so busy. Good to have you here. Jacqueline Vine, Speak Your Truth with Roxanne. Hey, Hattie, it's wonderful to have you with us today. Cassandra B, Betty Yellick, Stephanie, what up, Stephanie? Yes, the SBC will be talked about on today. Opal, Simply Tasha, Lovely Lady D, just everybody who is in the chat. Welcome to you guys, and welcome to the Mad Church Disease Podcast. I'm your humble host and servant, MarcellusMcMillian, and I am thrilled that you are with me. Shout out to the 100 of you that are joining me now. Please, if you can, make sure that you hit the like button. If you are watching me on Facebook, can you please hit the follow button as well as the like button and give me some thumbs up and some hearts over there on Facebook. Can I get some thumbs up and some hearts over there on Facebook? I see somebody gave me I got about 8 over there. Can I get to at least 15 thumbs up and hearts over there on Facebook? That means y'all got to hit the little button. Thank you. I see somebody hit the button. Thank you so much. Can y'all please hit the thumbs up and the hearts over there? I would really appreciate it. Well, today, of course, there's been so much stuff going on in society, just in general, and so much stuff going on. I don't even know where to start. Just so much stuff going on. But I just want to say to all of you that support the Mad Church Disease channel, thank y'all so very much. And I am just so honored that you guys have supported the channel and you continue to support the channel. And thank you guys for all your love and support. I really do appreciate it. Now, many of you guys have been asking me, well, there's a couple of things that I need to tell you. Number one, coming up this week, we are going to start using our text feature. Our text feature is where you'll be able to text a number to a specific number I'm going to give you. And then every single time our show goes live, you will get a ping on your cell phone. And it'll let you guys know that we are going live. So we have already purchased that software. It is ours to use. And we will most certainly be using that here in the very near future. So just wanted to let you know. I purchased it I believe it was last week. But I'm still kind of learning the system because, of course, everything is on me to do it. So I'm still trying to process it and get it all done. And so that's the one thing. And to everybody that's supporting the channel, thank y'all so much. Again, I do have to say I appreciate it. I'm trying to wait on a website to load here. That's the one thing that I want to tell you there. Then the second thing I want to tell you guys, let me see. Did I do this right? Oh, Lord, let me lift this up. Hold on. That's me. I might not be doing this correctly. Hold on one second. Hold on. There we go. I need to tell you guys, I have instituted a t-shirt to support our channel. We have our own merch now, and I'm going to be giving you guys all the information on the merch. Now, I only uploaded about 2 items on the merchandise shelf, so there's only 2 items over there, or 3 I don't know, well, 3 designs rather. But we'll definitely be giving you guys some more information on our merch shelf. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit before we get started with the program. But I just wanted to let you guys know we did open up the merch shelf for you guys. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is, since it's taken this website so long to load, if you're interested in supporting the channel with any type of merchandise, I will most certainly give you guys the links for that. I've got 103 of you guys here. Can you please go out and hit the X and please like the show and like the program. It's very, very helpful. Hey, Michelle, thank you so much for coming over. I appreciate it. Hey, Opal. Thank y'all for being here. Jazzy Carrot, thank you. Jazzy Carrot is a member. Thank you. Shout out to all the members that are in the chat. Who's in there? Tanika Shanette, Inez. Thank you, Inez. Thank you. Michelle Hall, all the members. Thank y'all so much. So we do have merch. You guys can go there. And I'm going to be adding some more stuff every day to the website, so you guys can of course get that, and all of that stuff will be over there. And moderators, I just put a link in the chat for you guys for the store. You guys can put that also in your link list, and you guys will be able to have that as well. All right, I'm trying to see where these likes are before I move on, because I don't even want to get into the topic, because you know that means I have to stop and be asking y'all to hit the darn like button, and y'all know how much I don't enjoy that. Because it just takes us away from what we're talking about, and I don't like doing that. So let me just see where we are with this, so I don't want to be stopping. I just hate to stop and do that, and I know y'all think I don't know, maybe y'all think we enjoy doing that, but I really don't, because it just takes me out of my flow, and I want to just still be able to keep talking to y'all without having to worry about hitting this darn button. Let me see here, where are we at? All right, just hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. I don't know what's going on with that part either. Okay, there we go. So just make sure y'all hit the like button. And moderators, y'all keep me abreast on what's going on. Go ahead and hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. I want to see these likes go up for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's get into today's topic. When you put yourself out on social media and you decide to become a voice, or you're someone who has decided that you're no longer going to sit in the shadows while you see other people getting abused, misused, etc. And a lot of times people are being abused and misused in the name of God, and you have to take a look at that, and you see that it makes it very, very difficult for you to just sit into the shadows and rescind into the shadows and not say anything. And although I realize that there are bad people in every profession, one of the things that I have come to grips with over the years is the fact that when somebody puts pastor, reverend, apostle, prophet, or something in front of their name, especially in the American culture, it really shifts and it changes people's mindsets on whether or not this person has the ability to cause trauma, hurt, etc. Because, we would all like to think that people who claim to be working on behalf of God would not come, in a way that would bring detriment, harm, and all sorts of things to people's situation. And thank you so much, Opal. I appreciate that. And one of the reasons why I have always been a big proponent of this is over the years being on Blog Talk and being on other radio stations throughout the country, one of the things that have always stood out to me is that anytime a preacher or pastor or someone who is in a leadership or an authoritative position breaks that authority and they create a adverse situation, or they create some type of trauma, for some odd reason, it seems that the church and the church community tends to side with the preacher or the pastor or the person who has committed the act. I was on a show years ago with Thaddeus Matthews. You guys might know him as the cussing preacher. There was a preacher out of Chicago who had been caught in an affair. There was a naked picture of him out. and the cousin pastor and I and another vlogger. Well, it was William McCrae. It was three of us: William McCrae, myself, and another, and Thaddeus Matthews. We was on a radio station. I believe it was in LA, and we were talking about the traumatic experience and the trauma of the situation that happened. And I noticed throughout the course of that conversation how now it wasn't Thaddeus who did this. It was the other vlogger. I noticed how people started turning the blame toward the victim. And it always amazes me that when we discuss church trauma and we discuss things that have been done and perpetrated by preachers and pastors, for some odd reason, the people in the pew have to take on the ownership, or then they get blamed for whatever the preacher or the pastor has done. And, you know, although I do understand that it takes two to tango, I want to suggest to you guys on today, and I want to say this emphatically so people can really understand what I mean when I say this. When a pastor is an authoritative position, he is in a place of authority. He is in a place where he is looked upon as being over the people who are sitting in the pew. Now, we don't like to talk about this, but that is exactly how it is looked upon. And most of the time, preachers will come back and say, no, you know, we're all just servants and working for the Lord, but we don't all receive the same treatment. In the institution, we don't all receive the same pay. We don't all receive the same accolades. There is no pew appreciation day. There's no appreciation day for the tither. There's no appreciation day. There's a pastor's appreciation. There's a first lady's appreciation. So obviously there is some level of distinction that is being made there. And in my humble opinion, I do believe that part of the problem with the institution in general is the fact that we have allowed these people to put themselves in places and spaces where they don't personally belong. And because of that, it will open up the door to bring all sorts of abuses and all sorts of misuses to individuals and in individuals' personal lives. Now, I want you to listen to me carefully. The word abuse comes from the original meaning, means to misuse or to use improperly. So when you abuse someone, you are mishandling them. You are abusing them. You're literally misusing them. It means that you're not allowing them to be used in the proper form and fashion that they're supposed to be used. And for some odd reason, a lot of preachers and pastors think that they have the right, because a person is called a member of a church, or because they're in a church, that some kind of way it excuses their behavior, that they can speak to you abruptly, that they can be rude, disrespectful, and all sorts of things. And even sometimes, and it has been seen, and we know this for a fact, that many preachers take advantage of women in the congregation sexually. Now, this is the one thing that we don't like to talk about. Shout out to the 211 of you guys that are watching me right now. I'm going to take a break right now. I'm going to ask for you guys, because I'm going to stop, because we don't even have 100 likes and we already got over 200 people watching us. So if you guys can do me the awesome favor, and I will go hit the X button. I want you to hit the X. I want you to go out and hit the like button. And I would very much appreciate you hitting the like button and doing that, so I can continue, because I don't want to continue get into this real deep, and we haven't even crossed 100 likes. So I'll be right back.
Mad Church Disease, a channel that's all about current events, news, and Christian drama. A channel that's dedicated to our forgotten brothers and sisters throughout the ages. Our brothers and sisters who courageously stepped outside the safe bounds of institutional Christianity to tell the truth. A channel whose goal is to help the average person understand that Jesus plus nothing is everything. So like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notifications button to be a part of this channel.
Okay, thank y'all so much for your patience. I appreciate y'all hitting the like button. I'm quite sure that you guys have done that. So thank you so very much again, because every time I have to stop because those moderators are going to let me know. Okay, so here's the thing. We have seen that pastors have taken advantage, and people that have been in spiritual positions have taken advantage of women. Now, please understand this. I'm not saying that all preachers do this. I'm not making a blanket statement. I'm not going to be, so ridiculous that I say that all preachers are doing this. But one of the things that I have noticed, especially in the church that I was born and raised in, when I talk about the Black church, that the Black church has a very unique way of dealing with and handling individuals who are, preachers who tend to fall into sexual immorality and all sorts of things of that nature. And for those of you that are looking for the Teespring link, Kim, I have just put the link again in the chat. It's in the chat. So y'all can get the link from the chat. So here's the thing. When preachers do those types of things, it's amazing to me how we turn and we shift the blame a lot of times to the victims. And we don't allow the victims to discuss with us and deal with things on the totality of what has happened and the totality of the situations that have transpired. And we just shift the blame to the person who has been victimized. And the reason why I say that they've been victimized, even if they've participated in the behavior, is because the preacher or the pastor is the person who is in authority. This is the person who has the authority over this individual. Now, I know for some of you, that's a hard pill to swallow, but you have to understand, even if this person is even in a leadership position themselves, this person, the pastor or the apostle or the bishop or whatever you call them this week, is the person who has the authoritative position, or is the person who is in an authoritative position. And I remember when Thaddeus Matthews and I and William McCrae, we were on a radio program, and I remember when we started talking about the woman who had been victimized. I remember how people started trying to turn it on her and make her the fault, make the problem the lady. And I was like, wait a minute. She's not the person that's in authority. She's not the person that wields the money. She's not the person that wields the power. The pastor is the person that is wielding the power, and he's using his position and he's leveraging this position so that he can, get access to these women, etc. And speaking about that, this week or the last couple of days, we've even found out that John Gray is about to open up a church in Atlanta. And I put John Gray on the thumbnail. And the reason why I put him on the thumbnail is because these guys are notorious for, not putting their willy or keeping their willy in their pants. And they make excuses for their behavior. And John Gray seems to live in an illusion and in a world that doesn't exist, where he's still allowed to tell himself and lie to himself that he has not had any sort of sexual immorality as it relates to him and his wife. Because dealing with Derek Jackson, he told Derek Jackson that he's only slept with one woman, and that was his wife. And you and I have heard the tapes, we've heard audios, we've heard other women come online and say the things about their nature of their relationships, and he's just been in steady denial. I mean, denial. John Gray lives by the denial. He lives by the Nile River. He just denies everything. And so, my question today is, what do you do when your pastor is the abuser? What do you do when the pastor is the person who's abusing you? What do you do when the pastor is the person that's coming on to you? And for some odd reason, for some people, that might seem exciting. That might seem like a roller coaster ride in danger, because you've got the man of God who is supposed to be living by biblical standard, who's coming on to you. And for some odd reason, you're not able to conduct yourself or put a standard in place for yourself to where you're not going to allow yourself to be abused and used. Because let me be very clear, ladies and gentlemen, for the most part, most of these people that will sleep with you, these pastors and preachers that will sleep with you, will not marry you. They're not going to wife you. Let me just give you this understanding. You're not going to be wifed. He's going to sleep with you. He's going to use you, and he's going to go home. If he has a wife like John Gray, he's going to go back home to his wife, and he's not going to pay it any attention. So if you're doing it for the fun of it, then of course, I mean, the people are going to do what their morals allow them to do and their values allow them to do. But for the most part, you need to understand that these preachers aren't going to marry you. And when you get that understanding, and when you get that, revelation, then maybe it might cause you to act a little bit differently, because some people are temple whores. And I talk about temple whores a lot of times. Somebody say, well, what's a temple whore? A temple whore is just a woman who's decided to give it up to men in the church or men in the kingdom. You just whore with saved brothers, right? You don't sleep with the brothers who don't carry Bibles and crosses. You just like to whore around with men of God. And just let me just say this. Most heterosexual men, if you put them in a circumstance or a situation whereby which they have space and opportunity, as I have said to you guys on this program a lot, most people are only as faithful as their options. And some of you who are so super saved, you talk about, I've been saved all day and ain't got to worry about sex and all of this kind of stuff, is typically because you don't really have any options. Some of us get propositioned on an ongoing basis. You may not have no options. You might have done all of the, sex that you wanted to have. But for the rest of us, there are a lot of us out here who are still a viable piece of meat. Hundo shop. I'm just saying. And so it puts you in a different position, because some people are all super spiritual, talking about, I don't have that issue and I don't have to worry about all of that. Well, it's probably because you're not getting proposition and ain't nobody bothering you. I'm just saying. But for the rest of us, there are a lot of us out here in these here streets who most certainly have to deal a lot with, folks coming at us. I'm just saying. I just want to make that statement. That's all I'm saying. So let's continue. Because I get tired of all of these people talking about, I ain't tempted. The Lord done took everything away. The Lord didn't take it away. You just done had all the sex you wanted to have. You older and ain't nobody knocking on your door. But for the rest of us whose doors are being knocked on, and for the rest of us who have options, let me just put that out there. I just had to say that. I had to get that out because, people are always doing that. But I noticed on that program that people really started shifting the blame to the victim. And I was like, what is going on here? So here's the thing. When your pastor is your abuser, what's the thought process, or what do you need to start thinking about? And I don't know who this is for. And one of the reasons why I, wanted to talk about this story is because an article that I read, and I'm going to be talking about that article in a minute. But it is, what do you do when the pastor is propositioning to you? Because most people say, oh, well, you just run, or you just leave and you just get out of the way and all of that kind of stuff. But let me say something. There are a lot of women who look up to these preachers and pastors because they seem to be in a position of power and authority. And let's just be real and let's be 100 with it. That is a very attractive position. It is a very attractive position to have an articulate man who can articulate and assimilate and who understands business and who can navigate his way financially is a very attractive situation. Trust me, I know, because I happen to be a man who, can matriculate and who can articulate, and I'm working on the finances. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm just trying to tell you, it is an attractive situation, and you will have a lot of people coming at you. You'll have people coming at you who do not even have or have any desire to get themselves together. They just want the experience of being with you. And one of the things that I tell me and my friends, we always have this conversation, when you encounter a person and a person gives you the privilege of entering into their sphere or their world, it is it is a privilege. And if a woman allows you into her space and place and allows you to be in her presence, it's a privilege. Same way with the man. You need to look at if somebody is in your presence, fella, you need to understand that it's a privilege for those people to be there. And and this is a thing too, when it comes to, and I don't even know why I'm talking about this. Let me stop right here for a second. Even when it comes to dating, like I like nice things and I like nice restaurants and I go to nice restaurants and I just like nice stuff. So typically in my regular life, whether I'm dating or whatever, when I take a woman out, I'm going to go typically 9 times out of 10 somewhere nice because that's my normal life. You know, it's not that I'm trying to impress you, but when people who are not accustomed to those types of things, they tend to believe that you're trying to impress them. And, you know, it's not an impressive thing when it's normal for you, because what's normal for me may not be normal for you. And what I've had to explain to a lot of dates, once they get upset with me, it's like, look, if I let you into my space and my world, I'm not trying to impress you by going to the place that I would normally go to. That's just my life. And when you get into a situation with a pastor or a preacher or whatever, when you enter into that pastor's life and space, you're entering into his world. So you're going to eat where he eats. You're going to dine where he dines. You're going to hang out a lot of times in the places that he hangs out with. And for some people, it can become intoxicating. It's exciting. And I do believe that some preachers look for people who ain't never had nothing. They look for people because that's impressive to a young lady who's never, gone to some of these places and spaces. And she's just overly impressed. But when you meet a grown woman who's lived a whole life and who can go buy her own steak dinner and who can eat at a nice restaurant herself, it puts you in a different position and place. And I noticed that a lot of these dudes, especially in the church, now maybe it's just for me, I'll notice a lot of these preachers they tend to go after women who are, how shall I say, not as strong or not as life experienced. They go after her because she's just impressed to be the first lady. She's impressed to sit with a hat and to have people to clap for her, and so she can get up and wave and, all these kind of things. They don't really go after a career woman in most cases, because a career woman who knows who she is, she's not really impressed by that kind of stuff. You understand what I'm saying? And if you're the kind of man who, wants to have control over a woman, you tend to try to go after weaker women and women who do not have their own brain because you can control them. And let me just say this. If you look at all of the cases between John Gray, Brian Karn, Jamal Bryant, when you look at these people, the women that they choose women who are weak. Most of these women they're weak women. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to any woman that's out there that suffered from this kind of a situation, but they tend to go after you. And so when a person goes after you, and they've sort of got their sights on you, because first of all, let me just say, I understand it's in our nature to conquer. That's what we want to do because it's the fun of the game, is to conquer. But typically, ladies and gentlemen, if he is going after you and he's taking you places and spaces and he's trying to impress you with steak dinners and phones and shoes and clothes and things like that, it's typically because you haven't had anything, and he's trying to use that as leverage to get you to seduce you, and it happens all of the time. And the trouble and the trauma that people can go through in the church is very traumatic, and it's traumatic for a number of reasons. One of the reasons why it's traumatic, because for a lot of people, they believe that whatever the pastor is doing or saying has been sanctioned by God. Okay, now I'm going to my notes now. Trauma in the church is double troublesome because in the minds of the person that it is being perpetrated on, it is being sanctioned by God because the bishop or the pastor is the one that is doing it. Now, and it makes me think about, what's his name down there in Georgia, Earl Park. When Earl Park was having a 14-year-long affair. Hey, God's Property, thank you so very much for becoming a new member. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, God's Property. Thank you. Appreciate that. When Mona Brewer was having a 14-year-long affair with Bishop Earl Park, one of the things that she said, and when I started looking and following that case, is that she said that the Bishop Park would tell her that by sleeping with him, that she was doing what God had ordained, or it was a part of something that God had instituted. And even when he was bringing in other preachers to sleep with her, according to her own statements, he was telling her that it was the will of God. Hey, Randy, thank you so very much for becoming a new member. I really do appreciate that. And this woman was, she was in this thing for 14 years. And for me and a lot of other people, we were just like, well, how in the world could she do this? And she was traveling to other churches and singing and ministering while he was preaching, and he was having a whole long 14-year affair. And the thing that came to me one day is I kept saying to myself, okay, well, how could he do this? And when I started, praying about it, thinking about it, one of the reasons why people can get away with this is because in their mind, they have created the delusion that God has sanctioned their behavior. And when you can think in your mind that God has sanctioned the things that you are doing, it gives you freedom and access to continue to perpetuate the activities and the things that you're doing. And I even look at it when it comes to certain people on the internet. It's like, people will take advantage of people. They will do all sorts of things for people, and they will do it in the name of God. And it's just mind-boggling to me. But one of the reasons why, it's troublesome is because people seem to think that God is sanctioning their behavior. And when you're sleeping with a preacher or you're sleeping with a pastor, and you're in your mind thinking it's okay because it's God's man, and you're both Christians or whatever. I don't know what kind of thought process y'all be going through. It is ungodly. It is unscriptural. And you need to understand that God does not sanction that behavior. Now, let me just say this. We're all sinners and we all make mistakes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to constantly keep pretending like there isn't a standard. Now, and this is where people get really upset with me, is because as much as I miss the mark, and as much as I make the mistakes and I don't do things right, and I cuss and I fuss and I get upset and I do the stuff, I'm not crazy enough to say there isn't a standard. There is a standard, and you can't be so crazy and you can't be so nuts that you just believe you can do what you want, say what you want, go where you want, and do whatever you want if you're going to say that you're a Christian. Now, I'm talking about Christians now. I ain't talking about everybody else. I'm talking about Christians, people who identify as Christian. And now I know what the tradition says, and I will discuss the tradition. But we have to understand, if you're going to say that you're following the tradition, which most of us are not, let me just say that. That's why I don't really, and that's one of the reasons why I believe most of these preachers can feel like they can do whatever they want to do, because they know that we ain't living up to the scriptures anyway. I'm just saying, even with most folks just not doing it. And I'm just saying, so they just think they're just as justified with doing whatever they want to do. They just think they can do what they want to do. I'm just saying. Because come on, affair after affair. Come on, Jamal, affair after affair, baby. Now we ain't even just talking about affairs. We talking about babies, newborn kids being born. Let's talk about Brian Carn. Brian Carn is a whole pastor, one church in 3 locations, allegedly sleeping with his best friend's wife. It's crazy stuff. John Gray, one church now in 2 locations. And he's as crazy can be. I'm just here to tell y'all, and y'all heard it here first, listen to me. The only thing that adding on another location does for these preachers is it allows them to hide their mistresses and hide the things that they're doing. Listen to me carefully. I know this game, and I know this game well. That's why some of y'all don't like me and y'all mad at me for having these types of conversations. I know this game. The only thing that this is going to do for John Gray is allow him more access, more money, and more space to ruin some young lady's life. I said it, and I said it out loud. Thank you so much, Spring Davis, for your membership. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. You know, let's just tell the 100% truth around here. It is going to create a situation that John Gray will be able to hide and perpetrate the foolishness that he does. And I just want y'all to pay attention, and you're going to know that I said it. Okay, let's see what Wonder Word here says. I saw a paragraph. I've seen all of what he's talking about firsthand. I have 4 women friends being groomed by my ex-pastor. After a while, they liked it, knew it was time to go, but didn't, of course. Yeah, because they like the money, they like the, you know, the stuff behind the scenes. A lot of abusers will say if the victim stops it, they will tell everyone about what she did to him. Yeah, and they will try to shame them. And let me also say this. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your membership. I do appreciate it. Let me say this for you guys. Let me say this. Trauma is very difficult sometimes to speak of and explain how you got entangled into the trauma. Now, a lot of times on this channel, you hear me say things like, don't be married to your story. And, you know, you got to learn how to divorce yourself from your story. And that's true as well, because it's not an either or, it's a both and. You got to understand something. Trauma sometimes is very, very difficult for certain people to even articulate. And this is one of the reasons why it takes so many years for people to actually come out and give voice to the things that have happened to them. It's because the trauma of it is very difficult to explain. When you listen at Mona Brewer, and when I listened at Mona Brewer try to explain her situation, thank you so much, Spring Davis. Thank you again. You know, it was very difficult for her to articulate it. She was crying. News reporters were in her face, and she couldn't really explain how she got herself entangled up into this situation, because trauma and a traumatic experience of having this kind of situation, it is very difficult to explain. And even when it comes to childhood traumas and childhood things that happen to you, it takes years for people to be able to even put voice and understanding and process it, you know, to come, you know, to really deal with that. And let me go here. Let me say this too. Now, even when it comes to children who have been molested and children who have dealt with molestation issues, let me say this. A lot of times, because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of my friends and a lot of people, and for those of you that do not know, you know, I used to sit in a lot of counseling sessions with former pastors and preachers and different things, and they would allow me to sit in. So I don't have a license for counseling or anything like that. I would never claim to be a counselor. I just know from the experiences that I've had and the things that I've heard from people, and this is what allows me to articulate some of the things that I say. I've seen people in counseling sessions who have gone through molestation, who have said that when they went through the trauma when they were children, and it took them until their later adult years to be able to process the trauma and deal with the trauma and speak about the trauma. And the whole time that they were going through the trauma, they were watching the people who victimized them go on with their life and live their life. And they couldn't understand why they were stuck in the mental place where they were traumatized, while the person who created the trauma is going on with their life. And one of the reasons why I said to you guys so often, you have to learn how to divorce yourself from the story and really give articulation to the story and grab your power back, is because while you're stuck in your trauma, the other person is going on with their life. And in the same way when it comes with these preachers, while you're having sex and you're being abused by these preachers, and you're going through the trauma of these circumstances, the preacher is going on about his life. He's still preaching, he's still traveling, he's still raising offerings, he's still probably sleeping with some other person. I mean, he's going on with his life, but you're stuck in this traumatic experience that you felt with this particular preacher, right? And it becomes very, very difficult for people to be able to process those things. Now, let me move on, because I don't want to keep you. I'm going to open up the phone lines here in a minute. Here's another thing. It's very difficult and hard for people who have been through these traumatic experiences to even articulate to the fact that they have to explain that they're worthy of compassion and respect. A lot of times people who go through traumatic experiences, they have to fight for compassion because the person who's perpetrated it on is revered in such a manner that the people literally turn on them. And I've seen this happen over and over and over and over again, that we will accept what the preacher does, and we will accept what they do, and then we will turn on the people that he did it to, because some kind of way we think it's their fault. And we don't understand that victims deserve and are worthy of compassion and respect. It doesn't necessarily mean that their behavior is to be excused, but we do need to have some level of compassion. And my thing is this: if you're going to have compassion for the pastor, at least you ought to have compassion for the person that the pastor was victimizing. And I always say victimizing because the pastor isn't he's the person who's in the authority. He's the authoritative position. I'm just saying. Okay. Now, here's another thing that we do in the institutional church. When the pastor gets caught in a situation, we minimize what he has done and we refer to it as misconduct. Or we put some sort of fancy word on it. And instead of saying he abused or he was grooming his victims or something, we put a lot of these little weird kind of words, in with it. We call it misconduct. And, the pastor got into an entanglement. It's kind of like what Jada Pinkett Smith tried to do. I got into an entanglement. What's an entanglement? And Will was like, what's an entanglement? Right, Dewan. Or we call it a wreck. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Exactly. Or we call it a wreck, And that's another part of that. Now, let me move faster because I want to make sure that I open up the phone lines to you guys. I want to tell you guys a story that I was reading this week about a woman by the name of Jennifer. I hope her name is Lyell. I hope I'm saying that right. The lady that you see on your screen, her name is Jennifer Lyell, and she wanted to stop her abuser by telling her story. Instead, her life completely fell apart. And I wanted to read a little bit about this article to you that I was able to find, and you can go back. And as a matter of fact, I'm so grateful that I pulled this up early today. Yay! And I'm going to put a link to this article in the chat for you guys as well. But I'm going to skip over it and you guys can go back and read it. You can go back and read it. But Jennifer Lyell was trying to do the right thing. In the spring of 2019, Lyell, then a well-respected Christian leader, a leader in Christian publishing, decided to publicly disclose that she was a survivor of sexual abuse. She did so after learning that her abuser, a former Southern Baptist Seminary professor, author, and missionary, had recently returned to ministry. So she actually decided to come out and talk about this guy because he was actually going to go back into ministry. So he was going to have a prominent position. He was going to be an authoritative position. So she decided that she would speak about what he had done to her, and she decided that she would come out and tell her story. Now, Lyell feared that he would once again have the opportunity to abuse others, and she wanted to stop that from happening. So she wrote up a statement detailing the abuse and shared it with a reporter from a Christian news organization. And after that, all hell broke loose for her. Instead of reporting that she had been abused, the Nashville-based Baptist Press, which is overseen by the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee, reported in March 2019 that Lyell, then the vice president of Lifeway Christian Resources had admitted to being involved in a morally inappropriate relationship with her former professor. So instead of saying that he had victimized her or abused her, they turned the story into a situation where she was just morally bankrupt, and she had, committed all of this stuff with this particular preacher or pastor. And see, this is where we get into the whole idea of two to tango kind of thing, because for some odd reason, anytime there is and I don't understand it. And let me just take a pause here. Maybe I need to slow down, because I don't understand what it is about when this situation and circumstance happens with preachers. Why do we turn and make it the woman's fault every single time? I have seen this every single time, even amongst Christians, when you see that situations like this arise with certain preachers. And I know that people have their favorites and all kinds of stuff, but 9 times out of 10, they work it out to be the woman's or the lady's fault. And it's very, very interesting to me, and people come by my channel all the time and they don't understand. Research and talking about these things is something that I do. If I say something about your raggedy preacher, your raggedy pastor, I don't care if he's your favorite. And I know we all have our favorites, but I don't care. I don't care if you're mad at me because I say something about Jamal Bryant, or I say something about John Gray. Or what's the Marvin Sapp? People go, oh, well, you just saying that, you don't have no facts. Listen, I don't come up on this platform and I don't talk about things unless there is a history of the stuff that I am talking about. I've been doing this for over 10 years. This ain't something that I just started yesterday. And just because folks just found my channel, they just think, oh, he just started. No, I didn't just start. I just started this YouTube channel back up about a year or so ago, but I've actually been doing this for almost 10 years. So when I tell you Marvin Sapp uses his Twitter account and he uses his account all the time to be wooing these women and putting out tweets and stuff, talking about how lonely he is and all this stuff, he knows what he's doing, and he knows what type of audience he is appealing to, because 99.99% of the church is made up out of women, and women who have some type of affinity or affection for their pastor is going to look at that and they're going to be like, oh, he's so lonely. Let me bake him a pie. Let me do this. Because I heard another woman on another vlogger's program. She talked about the fact that, she used to do they used to do all kinds of things to go after these preachers. So I'm just saying. So when I speak about these things, I know what I'm talking about. So the Southern Baptist Nashville Southern Baptist Press decides that they're going to take this woman's story and they're going to actually flip the script on her. Because here's what happens. Anytime a woman, a child, anybody comes out and they start talking about the preacher, the immediate response is to go into damage control mode, and we have to protect the preacher and the pastor at all costs. And this is the delusion of the institution. And this is one of the reasons why I don't have any problems now having these types of discussions, because it is necessary for us to protect your daughters and protect your sons and protect your husbands and wives when they're in this institution, because all sorts of things are happening in the institution, and we need to be adults about it, and we need to have adult type of conversation. So here's what happened in her case. The fallout was quick and it was devastating. According to the article, Lyell was labeled on social media as an adulteress. Like I said, the first thing to do is they're going to put all kinds of stuff on her, rather than an abuse survivor, with users leaving scores of vile comments about her on Lifeway's Facebook page and the Baptist Press's website. Pastors and churches called for her to be fired. She lost her reputation, her job, and even her health in the process. So her health even started to decline. Now get this. We're talking about 2 people who were in the act of the sin, but only one person is losing all of their stuff. The pastor ain't losing. Ain't nowhere in this article it said the pastor lost his church, his job, is nothing. She's losing. She's losing every day. Now, here's the funny thing. After they realized that they had made a mistake and they decided that they were going to correct the mistake, here's what they did. They tried to retract the article. They tried to get the article back and make a retraction. But by that time, it's way too late because the woman's reputation and everything is already broken. Everything is already broken. And here's what she said. She says she wished that she had never gone public. Instead of receiving support and compassion, she found herself trying to convince critics that she wasn't responsible for the abuse that she endured. And how often has that happened in the church where certain things have happened to individuals and they've had to try and fight to explain to persons that they are not the person who is responsible for the abuse, that the person who actually abused them is the person that they should be looking at. And it's very, very interesting. Breezy Brown. I don't put the Breezy Brown. Thank you so very much for your membership. I really do appreciate it. I really do. Thank you so very much. So this person is having to, fight. And this person is honestly having to, try and save some sort of resemblance of their dignity and their self-respect, all while these people are publishing all of this stuff and saying all of this stuff about her. She's trying to recover her life and deal with her health at the same time. And part of the article, it talks about, it says that, survivors have a really difficult time often when they face a lot of different stuff when they try to speak up about their experiences. While churches say that they want to care for survivors of abuse, those survivors are often viewed with suspicion. And what amazes me is so often we view the person who has been in the situation, or we tend to focus or laser focus in on the woman, which is very interesting to me. I just always find that very interesting because in most cases, the woman is typically not the person who's in the authoritative position or in the position of power. And I just find that very, very interesting. Now, Stephanie is saying here that the SBC considers women dangerous. Well, I mean, they consider women dangerous. Why? Because women have a brain? Do they consider women dangerous because women will speak out? I mean, you might have to call in and tell us about that in a minute, Stephanie. And Christian theology, it doesn't matter what you think about. Let me read this whole line here. While churches say that they want to care for survivors, those survivors are often viewed with suspicion, having to prove that they are worthy of compassion and respect. Christian theology about sin and about the roles of men and women often makes it difficult for survivors to come forward. And that's very, very true, because we look at women as weak. We look at women as not really we honestly look at women, if I'm going to be technical and tell the real whole truth and nothing but the truth, we look at women as being not equal, in spiritual stature as a man. So, of course, God's not going to consider them. It's kind of like they pat you on the head, oh, baby, and then they send you on your way. Let me just tell you a funny little story here. Well, it's not really funny. It's not really funny. I was, most of you don't know, I was a licensed financial planner for many years, and I'm actually going back into my profession here in the next couple of months. And one of the things that I found very, very interesting, I had the ability to write what we call a lot of business. I put a lot of ALP, what we call ALP, annualized life premium, on the books. I wrote anywhere between $7,000 to $10,000 worth of business a week. So you're talking, I'm probably, and when it comes as being an agent is concerned, I'm probably a little bit on the more successful, higher level of agents, because I can write anywhere between, literally, my last position, I was writing almost $10,000 a week of business. I mean, literally, you talk $40,000 a month. That's a lot for a life insurance agent, and somebody who's a financial planner. I mean, it's a lot. So I was writing a whole lot of business, and I had this little young manager. He's about 23, 24. He stayed in the office the whole day. He really didn't write any business. He didn't go out into the field. I was one of those agents who was always out in the field. And I like being out in the field because I'm a people person and I like meeting people. And so, instead of trying to sit somewhere in an office, I just like going out and meeting people and writing policies and, 401k rollovers, Roth IRAs, and all that kind of stuff. That's just fun to me. And I enjoy helping people put their finances and get themselves together. Right. So anywho, this little manager that I had, one month, I noticed that when we had to show the numbers on the board as far as who was doing what, my numbers was always at the top, but I was the least likely to even be considered in the company for a promotion. And I was lied to and was told that I would be getting a promotion within like a 3-month or 4-month time period, right? And I knew that they weren't going to promote me, because the moment that they promoted me, then all of the business that I wrote, and the business that I write on a weekly basis would actually go underneath my, for me, would go underneath my managerial box, so to speak, and it wouldn't go underneath my manager's box. And so my manager just kept doing all kind of little underhanded thing, and it just became overwhelming to me, to the point to where I was just like, this is just too much. And so one day I just got so mad, I took that little 23-year-old, whatever he was, into the office, and I hemmed him up and pushed him up against the wall. And I told that sucker jive turkey, I said, look here, you gonna give me my money. Because actually in that particular month, he cost me about 10 grand. And what he did something that cost me about $10,000 of money that I was supposed to earn. So it cost me 10 grand. And so I took him by the, I think, coat jacket or arm or something, and I held that little brother up, and I said, look here, y'all gonna give me my money, because y'all done messed over me. And the other big manager came out of his office, and he came over to my manager after he found out why I was so mad and upset. And he just, I kid you guys not, he was just holding his face. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have did this. And I'm looking like, really? Like, this food done cost me 10 grand, and you patting him on the face. Oh, you done made a mistake. I can't believe you did. I'm like, this jive turkey. I'm like, all right, I see how this is going to go. So I ended up in leaving the company, and just walked away from the company. First of all, because I've always been a independent agent anyway. I've never been a captive agent, so I've always liked staying independent. And I said all of that to say this: it's very difficult for you to be wronged by somebody and to then turn around and see somebody coming and sort of pat them on the back. Oh, you did that. Oh, we just gonna move you to another church, or we're gonna move you to another parish, because that's what the Catholics do. The Catholics, oh, we just move you to Timbuktu where don't nobody know you, and we'll move you to another part of the world, and we'll just let you go victimize other people. And here's what the church does. The church does this same kind of behavior. They do the same kind of behavior. And let's just say this, ladies and gentlemen, at its simplest level, it's abuse. And it's abuse because on some level, it is not consensual. Now, it might have been when they laid down and they might have had whatever they did. But at the end of the day, the person with the authority and the power is the person who is yielding the abuse or the power. You gotta keep that in your mind, and always keep that in your mind, as far as I'm concerned, when you're dealing with this situation. Because if you don't keep that in mind, my humble opinion is you will get the opinion of believing that some kind of way, and see, this is what's so sad about our society is we think for some odd reason that when a woman wait a minute, let me see what's going on. Okay. When a woman is put in that position, some kind of way, she was asking for it. And we still have this mentality in our society today that when a woman gets put into a situation or circumstances, that she was asking for it. I'm just saying, what do you mean? Yours truly says shame on me. What I do? I didn't know what I did. But we have to get away from that kind of thinking, because if we don't get away from that kind of thinking, we're going to allow these people to constantly keep abusing other people, and it's going to lead us down a path and a road that we just continuously can never come back from. And I have to think about it like this way. If you're a Christian and you're a person who defines yourself as a Christian, you cannot continue to think that it is okay to blame the woman and then turn around and excuse the preacher or the pastor because he's somebody who is gifted or God has called him. Well, we've all been called by God. And it doesn't make any sense for you to be using that kind of mentality to excuse the behavior of the pastor and then letting other people just go on with whatever they're doing. Simple as that. It's very simple. And I put the article in there for you guys to read. You can definitely read that article and make sure you can read the rest of it. I don't want to go into all of the whole thing. I just want to get out some of my points. Here's my next point. Most of these people that victimize these women, they've been grooming these victims for quite some time, right? These women they've been grooming these people to go through these types of situations. They're grooming them. And even when it comes to children and these molesting children in church, they're grooming these children so that they can take advantage of them, buying them things and taking them on trips, especially when we think about the Eddie Long situation. We know for a fact that they said that they were being groomed, they were being bought all sorts of things, and so that's one of the reasons why they were doing that. And they love to continuously blame the victims. Now, here's another thing that we like to think of in our minds. We like to think that the survivors were participants in their abuser's sin. That's how we view it. We view that this lady was a participant in the abuse, and we don't really look at it at the fact that she was being abused. We think that she was just a participant. And that is really how things are looked at in the institution, especially when it comes to the institutional church. Right? We have to understand that. And we need to understand that sin and violence that enables God's grace without giving abusers back their power. In other words, we need to understand the sin and violence that enables God's grace without giving back abusers their power. So we need to have some grace for the person that is abusing. So the pastor does need to get grace, but we don't need to give him back the authority and the power so that he can continuously abuse other people. And this is where we get into trouble, especially in the Black church, because we want to excuse the behavior and then we want to turn around and allow the person to still remain in their position. And that's really what I find to be the most egregious. And I really feel like a lot of people are going to have to answer to God for that, because you're allowing these people to use people, to groom people, to victimize people. Then when they get caught in their sin, they're allowed to go away for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then you just let them come all the way back. And something about that to me just seems catastrophic. And it seems like it's almost a definition of insanity, because you're doing the same repetitive behavior, but you're expecting to get a different result. You're expecting for the people to do something different. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, I have to say something is ultimately wrong with that understanding. Let me see something here. Let me go over here. Hold on. Hold on. I'm about to open up these phone lines for y'all. I thought I did, but something must have happened. Hopefully it'll leave open the phone number. But ladies and gentlemen, the phone lines will be open. Area code 609-663-1539. Please get on the horn. I want to know your thoughts. Tell me what you think about this particular subject. And we're talking today really about what to do when your pastor is the abuser. One of the things that I would tell you is to go to somebody that you trust, that you can spiritually say is on a good plane, and be able to have that type of conversation with them and deal with them and talk about it with them, so that you guys can, navigate your way through that whole process. Because I feel like in this particular lady's case, she went to some people within the Baptist organization where she thought that she was going to be able to tell her story, and they turned around and printed a whole article like she was the video vixen. I mean, they made her out to be a whole video vixen, and it backfired. So you have to be able to go to somebody or some people that you feel like spiritually will be able to deal with the situation and handle the situation and get you from a point A to point B. 609-663-1539. Get on the horn, ladies and gentlemen, while we're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to start taking your live phone calls. So get on the horn, ladies and gentlemen. I want to hear from you guys what to do when your pastor is your abuser.
Mad Church Disease, a channel that's all about current events, news, and Christian drama. a channel that's dedicated to our forgotten brothers and sisters throughout the ages. Our brothers and sisters who courageously stepped outside the safe bounds of institutional Christianity to tell the truth. A channel whose goal is to help the average person understand that Jesus plus nothing is everything. So like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notifications button to be a part of this channel.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to the phone lines. We're going to start taking your calls now. Let's go. Caller ending in 8550. You're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Hello, Marcellus. I'm sure you knew I was going to call in. This is
That's all right.
I could have my own YouTube. I could have my own YouTube platform about this issue.
That's all right. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, this is Stephanie Collins. Yeah, the SBC was the church of my raising, the church of my fathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, and this issue is so. It is something that the SBC needs to deal with, but it is dragging its feet. It's doing everything it can to not do it. The SBC has a problem with the pastors preying on women, but also the youth minister that typically is in the church is preying on the older children, the teenage girls that are in his ministry, and it is so problematic. You find it, that there's been at least one of these stories in almost every single church. And what is typically the solution to the problem between a youth minister and the young woman is that the parents bless it, say that, they're courting, that their marriages are that, God has called them to marry, and they will, cover up the abuse by having them get married.
Wow.
And we're having rampant, children marriages to pastors all throughout the South, where the Southern Baptist Church has so much power in these towns.
Wow.
And nobody does anything about it. And, when you say, what are you supposed to do? These young women have no harbor. They have no safe place. And there's nowhere to turn.
Well, and one of the things in this article, and I'm going to let you continue in just a second, but one of the things in this article that sort of stood out to me was the fact that she was a very popular person in the circles that she was working in. She worked in the Christian publishing world, and she was had been experiencing abuse by this particular pastor and missionary, etc. And the moment that she decided to speak up and out about it, instead of them actually printing out the article and talking about both sides of the issue, they made her the story. You understand what I mean? And I find it really unique,
Absolutely.
And interesting that, like I said in the topic, that they always tend to make the woman the fault of everything. It's almost like, Lord, the woman that thou gavest me.
That's right.
They
when I
go ahead.
Oh, so go ahead. No, when I put that comment in the chat about SBC being very distrusting of women and suspicious of women. There's rampant teachings in the FCC about women needing to submit on every level to the pastor, to the minister, to her husband, her father. And, it's talked about that it's the curse of Eve, that she's inherently dangerous, she's inherently tempting, she's seductive, and without that control and that submission, he is going to pose a danger to all the men in her life. And that is really, that is a common teaching. You have to remember, the FCC does not allow women to minister in any sort of official capacity.
Right. Well, and you're not they're not the only organization. Now the Church of God in Crooks will allow women to minister, but they typically will, they'll make them evangelists. They'll make them missionaries, and they'll do sorts of things like that, but they don't typically let a woman, like, she's not going to be the pastor of a church, and she's not going to be over, what they call to be over a man. Very interesting. She could be over men on her job, but not at church. So go ahead.
Right. And women in my Southern Baptist church, and I think this is true for most of the rural ones. I think the urban ones have kind of gotten away from this, but women in my church were not allowed to teach men over the age of 12. So Sunday school for teenage boys had to be led by a man because they were men, and a woman couldn't teach them any longer.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated by it. I really am. Now, I happen to be raised in a very strict holiness background. And now when I think about it, to be honest with you, we had one lady in our church who was a minister, but we did have some pastors in our organization. As you know, when I got in, I think I was like 16 years old. Pastor Sarah Crumpton and Carolyn Laserby, I never forget them. They were two very strong women. And Steph, thanks for calling in too, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next caller. But, we had two strong women who, were in our church, and these women were powerhouses. And I mean, they knew the word, and they were good, so I just find it very interesting that we think about women in those capacities. Area code 29. I'm sorry, caller ending in 2982. I do this every time. You're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Well, good afternoon, Brother Marcellus.
Thank you.
I just like to say thank you for this platform.
You're welcome.
Most of all, but what you're talking about, I've been a pastor for 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've ran two organizations of my own, Piggyback Ministries INC out of Iowa. I'm in Memphis now in January, and today's Entire Ministry since 2003, and Piggyback Ministries INC since 2013, and getting ready to open up another one, Operational Upgrade of Smart Ministry here in Memphis. We've been dealing with this here in the church, and this is something that the Lord is really tired of. The church have been doing so much sin, and it's not just the Catholic, it's all in the church, as you were saying. And it's always the woman's fault, or it's, I'm even seeing it where women ministers and pastors are being charged with,
Mm-hmm.
abusing young men in the church,
Mm-hmm.
as well as young women. That we have a lot of homosexuality in the church through ministers and pastors. And the thing about it is, God is not going to keep giving grace to us, because first of all, His grace is only sufficient. And so what He is saying to us is that we got to repent. That's why we see so much going on in the world today, because of the sin that the church has allowed.
Let me ask you a question.
Whatever you want to do, just like you were saying, we'll send you to Canada, anywhere else.
Let me ask you a question, caller, because I know in a lot of these people, and I want to ask you a question here. When it comes to dealing with trauma, as a pastor, as someone who's in that position, how does a person who feels like they've been victimized by you, or that you've abused them in some sort of way, how have you structured your ministry or your situation so that you can be held accountable when someone feels that they've been abused by you? How have you structured your situation so that somebody will have a recourse for dealing with you in case that they feel that way?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't do it, because I know that, we all got to give an account.
Oh, I know, but that is my question. That is my question.
But if it was me and someone came to me and said, Pastor, I felt violated, sometimes we can just say, tell somebody they have something on knife. Sometimes people, because they have been through so much of the Marcellus, and sometimes they've been through so much great trauma in their life that it's not always in the church, but sometimes people, they can take things, the wrong way. So what you have to do as a leader,
what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about verbal. I'm not talking about verbal abuse or something like that. What I'm talking about, caller. I'm not talking about verbal abuse. I want you to really hear what I'm saying.
That's what I was just saying.
Okay.
What I do is I tell people, I'm just like you. I'm human. And if I make a mistake, please come to me. Because sometimes we we're working, and sometimes we don't even realize we have said something or we have did something inappropriate at times. Sometimes it's just a hug, and maybe the person felt,
So let me ask you a question. Just based on what you said, and I'm not saying this is something that you have done, and I don't want you to think I'm picking on you, caller. You're a wonderful caller, so I just want to ask you the questions because I think this will help the audience. And this is where I think we get into the danger of the situation too. Because you said, okay, well, if somebody feels like that they've been abused by me or they've been victimized by me, I've asked them to come to me or to have a conversation with you. And so my statement to you would be that would put a person who's been abused or who feels victimized in a very difficult position. So, because now they're having to go to the person that they feel like who has abused them or victimized them to try and get their sort of recourse. So do you have some sort of buffer or something in place in your ministry or in your church that would allow somebody to come to them in order to come and approach you to deal with a situation if they feel like they've been wronged or victimized by you?
Yes, sir. I feel that any time that you feel that I've done something and you might not feel, that you can come to me, at least go to someone else. Even someone that knows me, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if she did it or potentially, but I'm not comfortable. I just want to, bring it to her attention. We have to be held accountable. We cannot just continually to push stuff under the rug. Things have to be addressed. Things have to be confronted.
So let me ask you.
I understand, but
right. But the question that I'm asking you, and I want to be a little bit more specific here, caller. So okay. in your church, how does a person who feels like they've been victimized, or let's say, for instance, it's not you. Okay, let's just say it's not you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll say it's the deacon. Okay, just to take you out of the scenario. Yeah. Let's say it's the deacon. How then does the person in your church come to you in order to handle that situation? Where do they go in order to get that particular situation rectified? Do you have an HR department in your ministry? Do you have
No, I don't have an HR. I don't have an HR. Okay. My ministry it's just open door policy. It's that way for 20 years. Anybody, if it's anything, anything that you need, you can call me confidentially, whether it's deacon or whoever.
Right.
They have that right to come because nobody should be shut up in an abuse.
So let me just tell you from my background. I don't know if you know my background either. I sit on the board of several nonprofits. Okay, so let me just say this as well. I think that it's very important for all pastors, all preachers, all ministers, all people who are sitting in these places of authority to most certainly have policies and procedures and things that are written that are attached to the bylaws of your ministry, so that when something arises, that you guys have a set procedure to handle these types of situations. Because what I am finding is that the majority of people who are in these types of ministries and positions do not have any sort of procedures or policies in place to handle it. And here's what tends to happen. When something happens, you tend to go to the pastor, and then or the leader. So you go to the pastor, but the problem is if the pastor is the person who is perpetuating the situation, 9 times out of 10, what the person is going to do, because there's no other recourse within the congregation, they're typically going to consult the law. So then it becomes a situation where, this might have been something that you all could have dealt with, and you could have dealt with in a private situation and handled privately. But then they have to go to the police because there is no inside, there's no sort of inside mechanism to sort of help you guys navigate your way through
you're coming from.
Okay. That's all I'm saying.
I understand exactly. And that's that. If it was me, and like I tell people in my organization, we have it as if someone abusing you, I don't care if it's a volunteer that comes and volunteer. You do what you have to do. Because I don't ever want anybody, because I know what abuse is. I've been abused through pastors and, not sexually, but I've had, some pastors say some not good things,
Right.
and I felt uncomfortable, being a woman. But I knew how to handle it. There's sometimes you just got to separate yourself. But I feel like being abused, abuse is abuse. And no pastor. I just think, take it, you go to the next level. If nobody is listening, then you take it. You take it to a higher authority.
Okay. Now, I'm hopefully not going to put you on the spot, caller. Well, let me just do this, because you're in ministry, so you know what I'm about to say. Most ministries today are not structured in a way whereby the individual pew sitter has a position to where they can address the pastor or the leader in a what's the word for it, in a more confrontational type of situation. The church has been set up in a situation where you have very limited access to the preacher, and if you do have access to the preacher, you normally have that access through someone else. It's going to be normally through an elder, deacon, secretary, or something to that effect. And I understand creating some sort of boundary. I get that. But what I don't understand is why we don't hold people who are in those positions in a situation where they're accountable. Because here's the funny thing. What I find very, very funny in our society today, all these preachers and pastors are always hollering about covering, and everybody's got to be under somebody's covering. But then when you look at this situation, and when you start talking about issues like this, you discover that the pastor don't have no covering. You would think you think that Christ is, we know Christ is all of our covering, but the pastor don't have no covering. You can't go to anybody to actually have any sort of dealings with the pastor, or have a sort of recourse to deal with the pastor in the situation. So I just find this question, I think that this question most certainly needs to be asked. It requires a great amount of thought. I definitely appreciate your thoughts. For those of you that are waiting, y'all need to call in 609-663-1539. Get on the horn, so that way we can hear your thoughts as well. And Roberta, here's the thing too, because Roberta brings up a point. She says, well, the office of, I think she's trying to say protocol. Here's the thing. What you will understand about most churches and most situations, especially as ministry related, you will discover that protocol goes out the window when people get mad.
Yeah. You're telling the truth.
When folks get mad, protocol go through the roof, go out the window. So it's very, very interesting. And I understand that. And, a lot of churches have a lot of hoops for people to jump through. But in this lady's that we're talking about on today's show, Jennifer Lyell, this lady, she came to the people that she thought was going to be able to assist her.
And they just shunned her away.
Yeah.
I know.
And they wrote something totally, completely, different than what she had actually expressed to them. And they did it so that they could save the person who was listed as the abuser.
That's right. Can I say something? Then I'm going to let the other callers.
Sure.
This is what I did. I put myself where I have other leaders that when something is going on in my ministry or something, I can go to them and say, hey, this is what, so I have more like an arbitration. You understand what I'm saying? That I can also have that person and me and other leaders that don't know us that say, hey, this is, and not just be for me. But what has happened, Brother Narcissus, and I'll say it again, is that it is called favoritism and recognition. And what is happening is because this person is known, and we've been, we travel and we go here. Nobody wants to say it's bad, but I teach the people that come through my ministry. I'm a minister of the word. I tell people, I don't have all this big organization, but people come sit up under me. I minister as God give me. I do one-on-one. I do group, whatever. But I tell people all the time, you cannot do that. We are leaders. And when people are hurting and they're going through whether it's leadership or through somebody's organization, You still need to be held accountable. You know, everything has to be proven until, you know, you're guilty until proven, you know, guilty. You understand, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But you cannot, that's because it's Bishop, I'll just say myself, it's Pastor Peggy White. Oh, my God, no. You take me to whatever extreme it takes. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying this for our pastors and leaders that are on this line and all over this this live, his broadcast. Please, if you know you need help, because we have to be the people to teach the people.
Well, I got another question for you before you go, caller. Just because, you know, you and I can talk about this. A lot of times what I see too in the institutional church nowadays is all of these people will holler about, I got a spiritual father, I got a spiritual daddy, and they hold me accountable. And typically when I look at the people that they're calling their spiritual fathers and spiritual daddies, sometimes they're around the same age as they are. And sometimes they might be a little older, but these aren't people that they actually hold them accountable. And I'll give you a good example of what I mean. Not to bring this up, but I name drop, so I don't care what people think or say. When you look at when you look at the Brian Karn situation, when Brian Karn just got in his situation, Joseph Senegal tried to say he was coming to sit Brian Karn down. There's no way in the world he could have set Brian Karn down, because Brian Karn is the chief operating officer. You can't sit Brian Karn down because he's in control of everything. And so I find it very interesting that all of these people that claim that they have this so-called spiritual covering and authority, and then when something happens and they say, oh, well, we're going to sit such and such down, such and such goes nowhere, and then the church just keeps rolling on, as they've always said. And I'm going to let you go, caller, because we got another call holding. But caller ending in 3251, you're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. You sound very far away, very muffled.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can. You sound much better.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me in. I really enjoy your show. I mean, it's almost you're a modern day prophet.
You guys amaze me when y'all call in. Y'all go, oh, I'm enjoying the show. Well, I try not to make it so that it's bad.
Oh yeah, that's true. But you're an answer to prayers. I have grown up in the church world. I've been in the inner circle, and I said, God, there is so much that needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. So concerning protocol and order, now that I've moved into the legal field, I'm a paralegal, and I'm seeking to become an attorney. What I've noticed down through the years is the ministers, the bishops of old, they have committed so many criminal acts and got away with it. And I feel like if they are made accountable to other authorities outside of their realm, then a lot of this foolishness would stop. Not only in the area of physical, sexual abuse, but financial abuse. I just now feel like we have to have a group of people such as yourself to bring these vessels into divine authority and accountability to other entities that will get them to see the error of the way.
Right. Well, I think it is. Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to say a lot right now, and what I'm about to say is going to really ruffle some feathers. But I think part of the problem is when you approach the people in the pew as if they're stupid and you're the smartest person in the room because you have pastor, bishop, or whatever in front of your name, you've already limited your ability to receive from them because you put yourself on a position that you know more than they do. And a lot of these preachers and pastors of today, they're so arrogant and narcissistic that it makes it very, very difficult for you to share just basic life things with them because they're just so narcissistic. Now, why would you have to tell John Gray, who's cheating on his wife consistently, allegedly, that he needs to go into counseling? You understand what I'm saying? That's just something as a man, as a grown-up, as an adult, that you would think that somebody in his position would know that if you can't keep your willy in your pants, that you need to go somewhere and get yourself some help, right? Nobody should have to do that. But here's the funny thing. While you're getting that help, you should be somewhere sitting down, not starting a whole new church, because now what you've done is you put another chasm in between you and your spouse that's going to create even more work for you to do. And they just blame it on the ministry. Oh, it's because I'm so busy in the ministry. And then we excuse this type of behavior, all in the name of being success and winning the world for Jesus. And I just think, me personally, I think something is tremendously off with the way that we're doing and we're building this stuff. And I think that it limits our ability to tell the truth about the stuff that we're experiencing.
That is well said. And we just need a group of activists to begin to start to move forward. But actually, it's going to happen. Because what I noticed with the millennials and Generation Z, they are not here for it. If you cross them, they are going to handle you appropriately.
Right. And I think the new generation will most certainly deal with them and handle them appropriate. Thank you so much for calling. I do definitely appreciate it. Caller, ending in 9262. You're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Hello?
That would be you, sir. Hello?
Oh, okay. I guess it's me.
Yes, that would be you. You might hear a delay, but understand there's no delay for me and you, and no delay for the people listening. So just go ahead and give us your thoughts.
Okay. Two things. I was just listening and I heard you say covering.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find that covering is anywhere in the Bible and it's biblical. I think that covering thing is just about money. As far as burning corn and the rest of them, you know, if some people sitting in their pews just got up and walked out and went to a real true biblical church, I feel like that would change a lot. But the Bible speaks about those people because it says that they're going to keep to themselves teachers that's able to tickle their ears and basically tell them what they want to hear.
Right.
All they really want to hear about is getting rich and getting the next thing from God. They don't really care about what the pastor does. As long as the pastor can make them feel good, that's all they care about.
Yeah. Well, living a life.
I'm sad for the victim, but
well, living a life of self-sacrifice and trying to live a life of humility is not very, very popular. No one wants to live that type of life in the Western culture. And there's a lot of dynamics here, you know, especially when we have these types of discussions that we don't really bring into discussion, especially when we talk about Western culture. Western culture heaps on a lot of Christians and a lot of pastors the necessity of the get more and the have more and all of this kind of stuff. And they even teach that Jesus wants you to be rich with the prosperity gospel. And so many people have bought into that. And that is the difficult part of, you know, bringing that out. And I agree with you as it relates to the covering thing. So I definitely agree because there's only one mediator between God and man, according to the Bible. But go ahead.
I got one more thing to say. I'm gonna hang up. Tell Daryl he better not let up on Larry.
Well, I don't think he will. I definitely will do
All right,
that.
Marcellus. We're listening to you, man.
You're good to hear your voice. Thank you so much. Caller ending in 1144. You're live with the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Good evening, sir. Good evening. God bless you. Sorry, thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling. How would you like to add to the conversation tonight?
I believe that the onus is on the parishioners in the pew.
Okay.
We would own it and read our own Bibles. Open your Bible and stop worshiping these fallen men and women as God. There's only one true God.
Caller, you're going out, caller, you're going in and out. I don't know if you're moving, but I need you to kind of get still if you can, because I want people to hear you clearly.
No, I'm not moving.
Okay, that's better. Go ahead.
I said the onus is on the people in the pews. We need to stop looking at our pastors as gods. We give them too much charge over us. We need to be accountable. The people in the pews, they couldn't get away with what they got away with if the people didn't hold them accountable.
Okay.
You wouldn't stand for that as a teacher in your school,
right,
or a.
Now, I would agree with you in one aspect. I think that that's true. But the second thing is, it's very, very difficult when to put the complete total onus on the people in the pew for this reason. Most of the people in the pew have been conditioned to believe by the preacher or the pastor that they don't have the ability to speak out or about the pastor in any capacity whereby which to hold him accountable. So it makes it very, very difficult for you to speak out, unless you encounter somebody such as myself and hear other people who tell you it's quite all right for you to say something when you're being abused and you're being misused and you're being mistreated. It's not an easy thing. So I can't say that I believe that in totality that everything has to rest in the pew, because we put a lot of stuff on the people in the pew and we put very little on the people that are behind the pulpit. I think that when other preachers start to hold preachers accountable and start calling them out by name and start dealing with the stuff that these preachers are doing, I think that then we would see a complete turnaround and change as it relates to some of the stuff that we see in the institution. What do you think about that?
I'm not saying that the people in the pews are totally accountable.
Right.
But just like you are a consumer, you can take your money someplace else. Mm-hmm. They can't get away with it and do what they do. You still support it. And I do believe you have to open up the Bible, pray and ask the Holy Spirit to lead you. You've got to break the cycle of us getting so much charge. I don't believe that pastors are able to hold each other accountable. That's just like doctors and lawyers who sign their stuff, or even the police department, federal order police. They co-sign their stuff. I think you have to be out of the organization first and not be a part of it.
Right.
People in the pew can walk, they got feet, they got their tithing offering and their love offerings, and they could get going.
Right. And I got you. And I want to thank you so much for calling in, caller. I'm just having a little trouble hearing you. But I do believe, I think the caller makes some valid points there. But let me just say this here. One of the things that has to be very, very, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be understood. When you've been indoctrinated to the point to where you can't speak out and that you're sort of muted, then people need to understand that in itself is a rendering a person powerless. A person is powerless when they can't, you've been rendered powerless because people have used the Bible to tell you that you can't speak out against the pastor and you can't say anything and you're just supposed to sit there and you're supposed to take it. And what I'm trying to tell folks is that it doesn't make any sense. And as it relates to abuse and to our subject for today, when your pastor is your abuser, even if you listen to the caller, the pastor who called in, a lot of these preachers and pastors don't have things in place to really deal with it. I'll give you another example. Hillsong. Y'all remember when I did the story on Hillsong and the preacher there in Hillsong in New York, when he was doing all of his stuff and they finally kicked him out. And then all of the other members and stuff started coming forward saying, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on around here. And because they didn't have a place where they could go and they could actually say, hey, we've got some problems here with some of the things that you're doing, because that's not how we run church. Church is and I remember I had a preacher one time, former pastor. He preached a message entitled "Shut Up and Follow." I'll never forget this as long as I live. His message was entitled "Shut Up and Follow." And he literally told the congregation, your job is just to follow. So you need to shut up and get with the program, whatever I've got going on here. And then you need to just go. And I thought to myself, well, he is out of his mind. This Negro is crazy. I'm not just going to shut up and follow. No, there's going to be some problems. And I remember one time calling the deacons and some of the elders, and I said, look, you need to tell Pastor this, and this. And then we ended up having a meeting. And then one of the first things that the pastor came out and started addressing was some of the things that I had said. And, you know, he was mad. He was having the attitude because people were writing articles about him in the newspaper because, you know, he was seen around town with a woman and some other things. And, you know, he didn't want to take accountability. And sometimes you could be under the tyranny of spiritual abuse. And here's another thing. Sometimes you lose your will to fight. Sometimes when you've been abused, especially women, and when you're in abusive relationships, when you've been abused so much, you lose the will to fight. And so many times there's so many people in the institutional church who have lost their will to fight. You're in a position and you're in a place to where you just, you cannot fight. And I just want to tell you, this is one of the reasons why the scripture becomes so important, because the race isn't given to the swift nor to the strong, but to he that endureth to the end. You know, you need to understand that even though David was fighting his Goliath situation, David had what was necessary for him to defeat his giant. And I believe that the institutional church and the Christian, the pew sitter, the person who is being abused, you need to understand you have what is necessary on the inside of you to muster the strength to get out of those relationships, to get out of those situations, so that you can be most effective and used in your life, so that God can be pleased with your life. That is what I would simply say to you, and to the preacher who is being the abuser. Just understand something. God is not mocked. What people sow, they're going to reap, and people need to understand that. And here's another thing that I found, and I'm gonna end the show like this today. I'm gonna end the show like this. I have watched of somebody on the internet lie, cheat, and steal folks' money. I've seen it. I mean, just lying. Then somebody else decides that they're going to get out and they're going to start talking about the person. And I've seen people literally turn on the person who's revealing the information about the other person, even though the information is true. And I've seen them, instead of acknowledging what the person has said, they've said, oh, well, he's just crazy. He's just out of his mind and he don't make very much sense. And this is what's going to lead us into our topic tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to talk about predatory use of spiritual power. Because a lot of these people they're praying and they're using their spiritual power to prey on other people, and they're using their authoritative positions to prey on people. And there was a book written by Deborah Cooper. I don't know, many of you may not be familiar with Deborah. Deborah wrote a book years ago. She said the church is where women pray, P-R-A-Y, and men pray, P-R-E-Y. And I don't know if you guys have ever read that book, have ever heard of that book, but you might want to pick it up, because I think that was years ago when I interviewed and talked with her on some other programs as well. But you definitely need to be paying attention to it. And this hierarchical, patriarchal stuff, only weak men get afraid, I'm just saying. Caller ending in 9575. You're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation? Caller 9575. You're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. Let me turn you up. I'm sorry. That was my fault. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Marcellus. How are you tonight?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I've got a question for you. Do you feel like the spiritual abuse that is being discussed tonight is also narcissistic abuse?
I believe that there could be an element of narcissism in there, because typically most abusers a lot of times have narcissistic qualities and traits. And when we talk about narcissistic qualities and traits, let me give you a few that I know of. The number one that gets on my nerves is that they never admit or take ownership of the wrong that they have done. Narcissists will never admit that they're wrong. It is one of the most frustrating things. They will turn a situation. They can get caught in a situation. I'll give you a perfect example. Maybe I shouldn't use that example because I don't know. They might be watching. I got to be careful. But I've seen situations where narcissists have wronged a person, and other people have come to the narcissist to say, hey, dude, you were not right. and the narcissists just try to blow it off and just make it the other person's fault. So the one big one for me is they never admit when they're wrong. That's number one. They will change the story a million ways to fit it, to suit it, to make sure that they come out on top and smelling like a rose.
Okay, yeah, you answered my question. I see it a lot in the churches, and that's why I had to come out.
And how long have you been out? Have you been out of the institution?
5 years now.
Okay, good for you. I know how. Let me ask you a question. I've been out for 16 years now. And I didn't even realize that until yesterday. My friend put a post up on Facebook, and he says, "Oh, I've been out of the institution for 15." And then I had to go and start doing the math. I said, "Oh my Lord, I've been out since for 16 years." Let me ask you, for those individuals that are watching us, that have maybe struggled and had some things, what would you say the first year or two coming out of the institution was like for you, maybe spiritually? What was it like for you, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, it was difficult. Yeah, it was difficult. I'm not going to lie. It was hard because I grew up in church, and I come from a family that, church is life. Mm-hmm. And so when you grow up in church and you leave the church, people will look at you like you're on your way to hell because you left the church. Right. And that's not true.
Right.
And so I had a lot of people, looking down on me. I even had some family members and friends act like they didn't want to associate with me anymore because I came out of the church. But I don't regret it because I have grown since I came out of the church because of people like you.
Right.
I have grown, and I thank God for it.
Well, I just want to personally say thank you so very much for telling us your story. I can honestly tell you, for the first 2 years of coming out of the institution for me, it was literally like having the spiritual rug pulled from underneath me. Literally, it was just like a divesting myself. And I started questioning why I believe certain things and why do you believe what you believe? And I had the wonderful pleasure of running into the Church Folk Revolution and those brothers and sisters who really sort of helped me. And even my friend Leonard, when I think back on the Church Folk Revolution times, I remember the conversations that Leonard and I would have and the struggles, when coming out of the institution and having to deal with the pain and the anguish of that, and then getting to a safe place to where you knew that God hasn't left you, and because you didn't, just because you walked away from the institution, you didn't leave God, because we've made the institution and God synonymous with one another, and for some odd reason, I don't necessarily agree with that. But I want to thank you so much, caller, for calling in. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you're going to get on the horn, ladies and gentlemen, please do it quickly. 609-663-1539. We're winding down our show here. I keep forgetting to turn that down. I do that every time. But I appreciate all of the callers and all of you calling in today. So when your pastor is your abuser, the first thing that I would tell you is, number one, you got to pray and you got to go to God and you got to talk to God about the situation. That's number one. Number two, I would tell you to go to a person that you spiritually trust, to discuss what type of abuse you've been experiencing, somebody who can give you some godly counsel and wisdom. And if you don't know anybody like that, I would suggest that maybe consulting, just opening up to somebody that you do know and love and trust. It doesn't have to be a person who's in spiritual leadership or something like that, but I definitely think you definitely need to confide that information into someone else. The third thing that I would tell you is, once you have made those, you've come out and you've had those types of conversations, I think that going to a professional counselor or getting some type of counseling to deal with the trauma of what has happened to you is most certainly something that you can consider. And I really want to tell you guys that you don't necessarily need to go to a counselor who puts pastor or reverend or bishop or apostle in front of his name. It's okay to go to some other people who have gone to school, who have been educated, licensed, and degreed in counseling, and letting those individuals speak to you and deal with that situation, because it is so darn necessary. Caller ending in 3182, you're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
So, is it me, Marcellus?
Yes, it's you, caller 3182. You're live.
So I'm not sure if I'm watching the same program that you're on now, but I do have a question.
Sure.
My question is, I've been in the church all my life, one church or another, and I find some of the things you're saying around the institution of church very true. My situation would be, if you're not in a church, I mean, how do you maintain your Christianity or your spiritual relationship with God? I mean, just staying at home, reading the Bible and praying, that's great. But that whole fellowship and with other Christians, I think is important. So I'm not sure how to go about that.
Okay, I'm very glad that you asked the question, and thank you so very much for calling in and asking that question. The first way that I would answer that question is, I think part of most people's understanding of the word fellowship, they don't really understand that most fellowship does not take place during service. Most fellowship is taking place after service. Fellowship is when you're having those conversations with your fellow brothers and sisters about God and having those conversations. So most fellowship is not taking place in church, it's taking place after church or outside of the church. So I think that what we have to understand is true fellowship and relationships with our brothers and sisters in Christ, for the most part, doesn't really take place inside of the institution. It takes place outside. And so I have those conversations with my brothers and sisters in Christ, and we fellowship. And see, this is the funny thing. People are so limited in they think that the only place that you can fellowship with believers is inside of a building. And that's just not the case. You can fellowship with other believers outside of the building. Years ago, when we started having fellowship on the internet, they told us we couldn't do it. They said you couldn't fellowship on the internet. Now everybody's on the internet fellowshipping, which I find to be really interesting. First, they demonized us and told us we couldn't do it. And now everybody's doing it. You got e-church and
right.
You got everything out here. So we fellowship with other like-minded believers. I spend a lot of time talking to other Christians and fellowshipping. What you don't understand, we're fellowshipping right now. Jesus said, if 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I'm in the midst. He's in the midst of us right now. So at the mere fact that we're having these conversations, we're fellowshipping. And so I just find it very interesting. Now, to answer the other part of your question, how would a Christian keep their relationship with God intact if you didn't have no Bible? I mean, not Bible, but you didn't have no institution. Like if you couldn't physically go to a physical building and worship like some people do in the whole world, there are other people in the world who cannot go to a physical building and worship. They will be murdered or they will be killed. How do those Christians keep their relationship with God intact? They read, they pray, they talk to God. That's how you keep your spiritual life intact. You trust the Holy Spirit and you trust the Holy Spirit's work in your life. That's how you keep it intact. I'm always amazed. There was a study done a couple of years ago, and I'm coming to you, caller, so stay on the line. There was a caller. There was a study done by a guy, and you guys might need to Google this. He decided that he wasn't going to read the Bible for a whole year or something like that. And he was just going to have fellowship with God. He wasn't going to read his Bible. He was just going to talk to the Lord and pray and those things. And do you know how many Christians got on the internet? And y'all might need to Google this. But they crucified him. They crucified him. How in the world are you going to make it if you don't read the Bible? And he was like, well, what did Abraham read? He was like, Abraham heard from the Lord and he lived his life. He was like, well, what did they read? Until we got the Torah, there was nothing for them to read, right? And so he was like, so he was just having this conversation, but it was the mere fact that he even brought up the suggestion. They murdered him on the internet. And I was always really fascinated by that. But hopefully I've answered your question as far as I'm concerned. I believe that you can fellowship is what happens after church, not during church.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll be reaching out. I appreciate your program, your show.
You're very welcome. I appreciate you calling in here, caller. All right, caller, thank you so much. Caller ending in 9246. You're live on the Mad Church Disease podcast. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Yay, I'm in.
Yes, you are. You are
Can
in.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me perfectly?
I can hear you perfectly, and so can our audience.
Wonderful. First of all, Marcellus, I want to say thank you for what you're doing. You literally are a breath of fresh air. When I came across the when I came across the name of your podcast, I was like, oh my gosh. There's so much that I would like to say because I've been following you for some months now.
Have at it.
But you know what? Tonight, I'm just going to say I thank God for you. I thank God for what you're doing. May the Lord just continue to use you to shed light to what's going on in the churches, in the body of Christ, amongst believers. I love just the way your thinking process, the way you think. And I thought of these things, and I'm like, am I the only one that thinks this way?
No, you're not.
I recently, I moved from Florida to Georgia. And so I was in a relationship, in a marriage at a church in Florida. And my ex-husband, now, he was having a whole affair, which my pastor knew about it.
Wow.
And they never wanted to tell me. They failed to deal with the issue.
Wow.
It got really, really ugly. I didn't know until a lot of the leaders from the church board was leaving the church. They've been trying to address with the pastor, hey, if we don't let her know, we need to we need to address him at least.
Wow.
He didn't want to because he didn't want members leaving the church. He didn't want it to get ugly.
Wow.
And all the while, as he was not only my friend, the pastor, he was not only my friend, he married us. He never gave me any idea that he ever knew about the affair.
Wow.
When I brought it to him.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Just because I've experienced this before, what you're talking about, when I was working in another ministry, at the time that your husband and you were going through what you were going through, would you say there were other people in the church that were experiencing the same thing at the exact same time that you guys were, or you just didn't know about it?
Maybe I didn't know about it.
Okay. Let me tell you why I asked the question. Because when I typically in church, when there's a bunch of affairs and stuff going on, this has been my experience. Most of the time when there are churches, when people are going through a bunch of affairs inside of a church, the leader is cheating on his spouse normally. Because most people get their cues spiritually from their leader. And so normally when the leader is cheating, people feel the freedom that they can go ahead and do what they want. Why do I know that? Because I experienced it. I was working at a very, very popular ministry, and the preacher was, he was cheating. I guess I can say that. He was cheating. And he ended up, marrying a woman. And then, he divorced his wife, and then he married another woman. How many days was it? 7 days after his divorce was final? Either 17 or 14 days after. I done forgot now. I can't keep up with these people. But he was either 7 or 14 days after his divorce was final. But I found other ministers and other deacons and elders in the church were cheating on their wives at the same time. And I was like, wait a minute. And people were coming to me, and I was like, it's a spirit in here. I was like, and I recognized, I was like, wait a minute. There is a spirit that has crept into this ministry, into this church, that was not here before, because now everybody's cheating on their spouses. And I was looking around like, what's going on here? But it was because of the leader. The leader was doing the behavior, and it opened the door up for everybody. I mean, everybody was cheating on their spouse. And I was looking around like, what? But it was something. And the only reason why I asked that question is because of that. But continue, because it made me think of that.
Well, you know what, Marcellus, I want to say this.
Nobody at that time could tell me anything about my friend, my pastor. Nobody could say anything about the first lady.
Same here.
Nobody could say anything about the pastor. It was like, you're not going to talk about my first lady. You're not going to talk about my leader. And so when I came to the church, nobody would come to me and say anything negative about them. And if they made even an attempt to, I would just shut it down, because to me, it was like, you're a man of God, whatever. But the first lady and I, we were good friends. So she did confide in me and told me that there was a sister at the church who left the church, who they were saying that the pastor was with that woman. I didn't want to believe it. After I left the church, however, the woman that they said was with the pastor, her husband actually said, yes, I caught the pastor with my wife.
Wow.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
So why what you're saying makes sense, and why my situation was not dealt with with care and with respect.
Right.
I thought I was being crazy. I was fasting and praying. And I did 40-day fasting. So now my ministry is for broken families, for women and men in families. Because of course, my children has been destroyed by this. My daughter has been destroyed by this.
Right.
But God has been healing us gracefully.
Right.
And that's why I hold on and I watch you every chance that I get, because I just love the way you talk about your upbringing. I love the way you observe things that are happening in the church, in the body of Christ.
Right.
And it's sad. But when the pandemic happened, when I came here to Georgia, I really had anxiety to even go back into a church.
Right.
When I went and I started visiting churches, was like, I was so afraid of the hurt that I might experience. So my thing was, I don't want to go to church and get close to anyone. I just want to go get the word and leave.
Right.
But then shortly after the pandemic happened, and let me tell you, my best experience ever with God has been home without being in the church, where we call the four walls of the church.
Right.
I became the church.
Exactly.
I started reading more. I started praying more. And God started revealing to me what was happening to me around me. And when I tell you, if you have not experienced God in those quiet, still moments, then you have not experienced God. If the only time we know God is when we're around a bunch of people that so-called say that they're Christian.
Right. Well, it's too many voices.
For the word says
what happens is, and I learned this many years ago, it's too many voices. It's too many voices. And there's really only one voice that counts. And if you understand the leading of that voice for your life, it makes a tremendous amount of difference as far as how you deal with certain circumstances. But let me just give you let me just give you something. What you experience when you talk about not letting anybody talk about your pastor or your leader, etc., that's what I refer to as mad church disease. And we all have suffered from mad church disease, and that's one of the reasons why the channel is called Mad Church Disease. And here's why it's called that.
I love it.
And here's why it's called that, because mad cow disease affects the neurological system and the brain of the cow, so that the cow, eventually, at some point in time, the cow will not be able to stand up on its four legs. At some particular point in time, the cow can do nothing but keep floundering and falling down to the ground and foaming at the mouth. And there's so many Christians who do not have the ability to stand up on their own four legs and have a real discussion about spiritual issues and spiritual things that they're facing without being demonized or without being patronizing or being condescending and all those types of things. And that's one of the reasons why when I have these conversations over here and I don't pay attention to the chat, because I know we're going to get one-to saints and we're going to get folks who, well, the Bible. And I get all of that. And I love the scripture. Don't get me wrong. That's personal. It's for your life, etc. I get it. But all of us not living up to the Bible 100% anyway. Now it's our guidebook.
Absolutely.
And we can approach it and we can come, but let's have some common sense too. Because when we talk about these subjects, especially when it talks about your pastor is your abuser, Don't be coming over here quoting 12,000 scriptures, because at that particular point, it doesn't do me any good, because I'm hurting. And this is the one thing that I've tried to tell people so many times. To a hurting person, or to a hungry person, it's not gonna solve the problem, because I'm hurting and I'm hungry. So if you're gonna solve my problem, then I need you to meet my need first, and then let's deal with the other side of that. And I think that is the most necessary thing as it relates to that. I want to thank you, caller. We've approached 2 hours and 8 minutes. I done went way over my time today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I will call again. My name is Chantel.
Okay, Chantel.
And I will call back again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Chantel. You have a blessed day as well. I'm elated. Thank you guys for showing your love and support to the channel. I really do appreciate it. Shout out to all of these awesome moderators that are in here. Shout out to all of the people who purchased the membership. Shout out to the people who cash at me. I'm afraid to call any names, because if I start calling names, some people get mad. They don't want me to call names. Some people do want me to call names. I don't know what to do. But yeah, let me just say thank you, Dawson. I appreciate it, brother. Ramon, let me see. Ramon, shout out to you for the Cash App, and to all of you that have Zelled me, Cash App, purchased a membership. I'm going to definitely be doing something to shout all you guys out. Thank y'all so much. Please make sure you hit the like button. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're watching me on Facebook, please make sure that you hit the like and follow button, so that way every single time that I come on, you will be able to have a conversation with me. I think I got one more caller. Lord, let's see here. Is this the same caller ending in 9246?
Oh, I need to hang up, right?
Oh, no, you can't. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. I'll just put you back on mute. I didn't know if I'd already answered your call. All right. I just want to make sure I answered your call. Stephanie, I appreciate your love and support to the program. Thank you for getting your membership. I really do appreciate it. Breezy Brown, thank you so very much. I don't know if I shouted you out during the podcast. Thank you so much for getting your membership. And to all of you, the best way that you can help and support the channel is to make sure that you purchase a membership. I'm going to be talking to you guys this week later about the backup channel, because we got to create a backup channel in case something goes on. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more personally about some personal things on my backup channel that I don't want to put out here. I'm going to put it on the backup channel. Those will be like my personal vlogs when I'm cooking and walking around the house, because I know not everybody wants to see me cook and all those types of things. So, but Teresa, go back and watch the show. And you can get a membership if you're on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, you can go to our YouTube channel at Mad Church Disease, and right next to the subscribe button, you will see a button that says join. Hit that button, and that's how you join. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can come over to YouTube if you have a YouTube account, and you can join us on YouTube. Otherwise, you can Cash App us. The Cash App information is on the screen, and it's also in the description below. You guys can get all the Cash App information and all the information down below for the support. I wanted to read your comment here, Teresa, because I saw this long comment. Okay, it says, I wish I had caught this program from the beginning. I fought my way out of a 20-year relationship with a pastor that almost killed me and made me lose my mind. This thing literally made me stop believing in God and hate the church. Lord have mercy. I saw so much and experienced so much. God had to take me all the way and restore me and build me back up again. I speak, and I speak boldly. Thank you for sharing this. If you remember the pastor who got busted on video giving a woman head, well, that what? Teresa, you need to reach out to me. Somebody put my email address in the chat, please. Don't make me type my email address. Teresa, reach out to me so you and I can have a conversation. I know who you're talking about, Teresa. What? Teresa. Truth Seeker John, thank you so very much for your membership. Lord have mercy, Teresa. I know exactly who you're talking about, Teresa. Lord of mercy. Okay, somebody make sure y'all put my email address in the chat for Teresa, please. Teresa, reach out to me by email so I can chat with you by email, please. And since you're on Facebook, I'll probably Facebook chat you, because I'd rather do that. It's faster for me. so I can get out my thoughts. I do a million things in a day. Lord of mercy, Teresa. Now you done said a whole mouthful. Wow. I know exactly who you're talking about. I was doing online church and giving long before COVID. I love it. Don't see the fakeness, hypocrisy, liars, cliques, entertainers, fashion show, gossiping, including bishop elders. Well, I love my e-church. I tell you that I do. I like it. Well, thank all of y'all for supporting the show. Please, if y'all could do me the awesome favor of hitting the like button if you are on YouTube. Please make sure as we close out the show, please make sure y'all leave me a comment on this video, underneath this video on YouTube, and also on Facebook. I'm sure you guys will have all of the comments underneath there. I love reading your comments and knowing your thoughts, and I do respond to them. It takes me some time, but I will respond to you. I will do that. So make sure you do that. Thank you guys so much for your love and support to the Mad Church Disease podcast. Tomorrow's episode, we're going to be talking about predatory use of spiritual power. And I want to talk about E. Bernard Jordan and the prophecy for profit. We're going to talk about predatory use of spiritual power and the prophecy for profit. That's what we're going to discuss on tomorrow's broadcast. Please make sure that you share this all over, and don't be scared, because I'm going to talk about this whole idea of prophecy for profit, and we're going to deal with it on tomorrow. Thank y'all for joining me for the Mad Church Disease broadcast. I couldn't even get it out, and I'm out of here. See y'all tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Mad Church Disease Podcast. Visit us online or on our Facebook page at Mad Church Disease.